Hey, welcome to the Woodshed number 2. I'm John Lamberton. Today our lesson is on permutations, and I'm calling it Permutational Potency because, as you'll see, using permutations can really quickly expand your harmonic vocabulary, your encyclopedia of chords. So anyway, I'm really excited about this topic. Let's dive in. All right, so I want to start off talking about factorials and how to use that to basically help expand your chord vocabulary. And we'll be applying this particularly to 4-note tertian chords. I'll get into why that is, why not 3, why not 5. But then once we've sort of figured out the gist of permutations on guitar or any instrument, just like chordal permutations, then we'll consider different keys and what about different chord qualities and what about other structures like quartal or quintal or secundal or septal chords, and what about just like other intervallic structures, tone clusters, etc., Elliott Carter style pitch class sets, and a lot of this will come together and be sort of like synthesized when we talk about voice leading in a future video. And there's also the sort of underlying question of what about the unplayable chords. This is sort of for guitarists, but it's really for anybody. And depending on your instrument, some of these chords will fall like onto the instrument very weirdly. Like what's easy on piano might be difficult on guitar, vice versa. So what you do with the chords that aren't really physically playable, or at least that might be dangerous even. So we got a picture of Ben Monder here. Hat tip to him for sharing this concept with me back in the day. He didn't put it in exactly these terms, but back in the day, I sent him an email asking basically, if I could study with him, and he sent me back this thing that was like, here's what I practice, and it's like a career's worth of practice. So it's no joke. I'm still practicing it. I think he still practices it, even though it's clear that he's pretty much mastered all of this stuff. But nobody else has really mastered this, and it's all out in the open. It's there to be mastered, but and on the right here, we have 6 different voicings. Heads up, one of them has a typo, and I just didn't want to go back and renotate it. But one of these is a redundant voicing, and there's actually yet another novel voicing beyond this. So it should be 6 voicings here that are distinct, but it's only 5. Okay, so why 4-note sets? Well, basically, the answer is just that the short answer is like that 4-note sets are kind of the sweet spot for humans. If you applied these same concepts to 3-note chords, it would work out fine, like with triads or 5-note sets. However, the 5-note sets are going to be completely overwhelming. Just there are too many of them. And 3-note chords, the triads, are going to be maybe a little bit boring. Ben himself suggests starting with the triads. I personally have always just really spent most of my time in the 4-note set range. So let's talk about why this is. So we got factorial here. You can see that basically as you increase from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 up to 7, the numbers scale up really quickly. And beyond this, beyond just like the huge amount of materials that you might get stuck with if you were doing, say, 7-note sets, there's also some implication of how playable it is for your instrument. So got Alan Holdsworth here. He's got this stretchy chord, and some of these things, like this chord that he's playing, might be totally no problem on a piano, but as you can see, his fingers are pretty stretched out. And so this graph here on the bottom right, basically I'm showing on the horizontal axis the size of the pitch class set. So basically, like if we're here at the end with 8-note sets, that's saying 8 distinct different tones, and so that means that there are 5,040 different ways to arrange that 7-note set. An 8 would be even worse. So if we're down at 4, though, like from this angle, when you see how many different variations of 7-note sets and 8-note sets there are, it doesn't really like even register that 3 and 4 are different, but there are going to be 24 different ways to voice a 4-note set and 6 ways to voice a 3-note set. But then as soon as you get to 5 notes, then it's quickly kind of implausible at 120 different variations. Okay, so this graph is basically a visualization of permutations, and so, or of factorials at least. So we have 1 factorial, and then 2 factorial, 3 factorial, which we see as 6. You got 6 different little nodes there, and then each one gets 4 variations for 4 factorial, giving us 24. 24. And basically what this means is, let's say that we have a generic set A, B, C, D. So you can arrange this a few different ways. Start off with A, B, C, D. Maybe switch around the C and the D. You got A, B, D, C. Okay, that's another way to voice it. Flip around the C and the B. You got A, C, B, D. Flip around the other ones. You got A, C, D, B. So you can keep on doing this until you get to 24. And so that's why it's nice to know that 4 factorial is 24. If you were doing this with, say, 7-note sets and you had 5,000 different ways to voice it, then you would at least know that there are 5,040 different ways to voice it. And so if you were really hell-bent on doing that, what I would say the best option would be is to go on some sort of website, like a permutation list generator, and then generate the list of all the chords, because it's not going to be feasible to do that by hand. And this kind of exhaustive approach is interesting, but at the end of the day, I think that it's best to sort of stick in this range of 4-note pitch class sets, because it's actually something that's manageable. So let's look at what these 24 permutations look like for 4 factorial. Cool. So this list is, for each of these arrangements of the same 4 letters, it's going to be a distinct voicing. So at the same time, I'm saying, A, B, C, D. These could be taken to be pitches, but we'll talk about tone clusters and stuff like that later. I'm just going to flip these generic variables over to pitches for an A major 7, or sorry, an A flat major 7 chord. And I chose something with some flats in it so that we could see just, a little bit more easily the distinction between the different notes. Okay, so we got this list here of 24 different versions of A flat major 7. So that top one would be, from bottom to top, A flat, C, E flat, G. That's basically the closed form, looks like this, of A flat major 7. And there's going to be a typo in this, but we already discussed that. So next one would be A flat, C, G, E flat. If we look at the bottom one here, the very lowest, it's going to be this very spread out A flat, G, E flat, C. So that's the most spread out version of this. Second most spread out is, if you go 2 up from that, it's A flat, E flat, C, and G. I like this one. It has these. It's basically a pair of fifths that are spread apart such that it gets 2/5 intervals, and it turns out to be a major 7th. It's a nice sounding chord that's kind of spread out, but it still has that 5th-y richness to it. Okay, and so these are the 6 different voicings, but these are going to be the inversions. So everything starting with A flat is a type of voicing, and people will call these different things like drop 2, drop 4, drop 2, drop 4, etc., closed voicing, whatever. I feel like it's more important to get a feel for it than to know some sort of arbitrary terminology for it. Because if you say drop 2 or drop 4, it's saying that you're dropping the second note down, but so the second note from the top, second note from the bottom. I don't care to remember that. That's not important. So I would say just think of it as 6 different ways to arrange a chord voicing, and then there are 4 inversions of each of those. Okay, so what about E flat major 7 though? What about B flat major 7 or F major 7? Well, so just because you get the 24 voicings of our starting point A flat major 7, well, there are 12 keys. So we got to go through B, E, A, D, G, etc. Here's the circle of fifths, and that gives us if we multiply the 24 voicings by the 12 keys, we get 288 chords. That's a lot of chords already. But to make this even worse, or even better, depending on how you look at it, basically we can do different chord qualities. So I was starting off with major seventh, but we could also do minor seventh, dominant seventh, minor 7 flat 5, or half diminished, minor major seventh, basically any chord type that you could get, any sort of shape of intervallic structure, and these might come from 7-note scales, or as we'll talk about in a future video, it could be the pitch class set 0, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be a weird kind of chromatic fragment, but let's just sort of stick with normal, quote, jazzy-ish chords. So what other ones could we do? Well, we could do, major 7 plus 5, like an augmented chord. Note that a major 7 plus 5 is essentially a slash chord. If you were to say like A flat major 7 sharp 5, that's essentially like a C triad over A flat. Think of it either way. This major 7 flat 5, you could treat that as something from the Lydian scale, but because we're only doing 4 notes, you're essentially replacing the fifth with the sharp 4, but we're calling it flat 5 to keep it tertian. And then we got dominant 7, sharp 5, dominant 7, flat 5, minor 7, sharp 5, and this is kind of a not really like, I feel like that sharp 5 essentially becomes the root, but just, nitpicking here. Minor 7 flat 5, sus 4, and like the sus 4 here, which I'm saying is 0, 4, 5, 10. You could also treat that like a slash chord, but it would be slightly different, but it would have a very similar sound. In this case, if you were to say like A flat 7 sus 4 versus G flat as a triad over A flat, G flat over A flat. You could also extend this to something like a G major triad over A flat to get you that auxiliary diminished, or kind of like something derived from the harmonic minor scale, like one of those modes. But anyway, since we had 288 chords, now I've added 10 more chord qualities, and I'm realizing that this list is it's missing minor major 7, it's missing a few different types of chords at least. So if we just simply multiply it by 10, we're already pretty much at 3,000 chords. We're at 2880 different chords. So this idea is very rich and potent, and it gives you a huge chord vocabulary very quickly. So got a little example here of some chords, and the reason I'm putting this here is because I think that in practicing just a standard isolated shape, like a major 7th chord, that's cool, and you could drill all the major 7ths, and then drill all the minor 7ths, and then drill all the dominant 7ths, but those chord qualities tend to work functionally around one another. Like a dominant 7th will usually lead to a major 7th, but with a different root, and so it's good to take them in a context and run through the inversions of them. And so with the inversions, I would just pick one of the voicings, like say just drop 2s, or just drop 4s, or just closed voicings, and then run through the 4 inversions of each of those, or the 4 inversions of just that one type of voicing through a tune. So I have some chords here for one of my tunes, Gongke, and basically, I have here on the chart D flat minor major 7 over A flat, and that A flat is meant to say that the A flat's in the bass, the 5th is in the bass, but we're just going to ignore sort of the bass voicings here and just treat it like D flat minor major 7. So just reduce whatever you need to something that's a 4-note version of it. So like if I have like E major 7 sharp 11 over G sharp, as we see here at the end of that second line, then I'm just going to call that E major 7. If I really wanted to get that major 7 sharp 11 sound, I could treat it like B major 7 and substitute that in, but we'll get to substitution some other time. So, take the C major 7 and go through the 4 different voicings of that, or the 4 different inversions of a given voicing with that. Then same with F minor major 7, and same with D flat minor major 7, etc. So basically, this was just meant to show you how helpful and potent having permutations under your belt can be. Um, some of these are going to be less interesting or like less resonant sounding. Some of them are going to be, quote, wrong chords, but like for instance, the third inversion, major seventh chord, in the drop two voicing, everybody considers that the wrong way to voice it. But there's no right or wrong here. That's just one of the permutations, and I think that chord is great. A lot of people think it's great, so don't let anybody tell you otherwise. In future video, we'll be getting to voice leading, and I'll do this in the context of the Almanac of Guitar Voice Leading by Mick Goodrick from his Good Chord series, Mr. Good Chord. And this is like a deep book. It's just basically a list of every single way to voice lead everything according to this system, and so I'll get into sort of the generator function of that modality. But these chords that we talked about today are pretty standard. They're like on the spectrum of normie to jazz nerd. So to help us gear up for future chords like quartal harmonies or slash chords or tone clusters or pitch class sets, it's kind of good to just start with these normal chords that seem immediately applicable to standard repertoire. But just a reminder, some of these might fall on your instrument in a way that's like, it might be pretty typical. It might be a stock chord voicing, or it might quite literally, at least for guitarists, be dangerous. So don't play anything that hurts your fingers. Don't try to do anything that is going to cause tendon damage. And at the same time, there's some that are just going to be straight up, unplayable in some ways. And what do you do with these unplayable chords? I'll discuss this more later, but the short answer is basically arpeggiation. There's always a way to play something as a single note arpeggio, even if you aren't playing all four notes at the same time. So there's always a way to use these. And in conclusion, just to wrap up and sort of review what we just talked about, you can use factorials to determine how many voicings of a pitch class set are possible. So for triads, this is 6 different voicings. For 4-note pitch class sets, it's going to be 24. In 5, it skips up to 120, and so on. It becomes a lot more material to manage as you get to larger and larger sets. But also, once you're talking about 6-note pitch class sets, that can also be seen as combinations of 2 different 3-note pitch class sets, and 8 would be combinations of 2 different 4-note pitch class sets, etc. So with the 24 voicings of the 4-note pitch class sets, it's going to be a pretty nice sweet spot for applying chord permutations in our practice, and it's not going to be overwhelming, but it's not going to be boring. So when you multiply this then by all the different keys, and you try different chord qualities, whether just major, minor, like major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, or you get extra spicy and throw in like, major 7, sharp 5, like, augment your fifths, flat your fifths, whatever. You'll very quickly hit, around 3,000 different chords. And it's not good to just like sort of systematically go through this. Don't read the dictionary, if you will. Don't read, like aardvark, whatever the next word is. Like, go, like, it's better to treat it like you're reading a book and you keep on looking up words that you don't know and trying to refamiliarize yourself with them. Don't just, go through all the major 7th chords and then, cool, I'm finally ready to move on to dominant 7th. And it's like, so you're going to be totally favoring the major 7th physically because you've ingrained that into your hands. But, we want to do it in context. So run through tunes, doing the 4 inversions of a given voice, sort of distribution, like a different spread of voicing. And this will help prepare you for the Goodrick style voice leading. And, we talked about pretty standard chords like tertian chords, basically stacked thirds that would come from probably 7-note scales, but whatever. We can apply this, though, to any sort of 4-note chord or any sort of size chord from any scale. And this might be quartal harmonies, tone clusters, pitch class sets. And so we'll talk about that in a future video, and it's going to be pretty involved, so it's good to start off with this pretty standard way of doing things. Yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. It really helps out with the algorithm, as does commenting on the video and leaving a thumbs up. Please share this if you think it's been helpful. I really appreciate sharing it with new people and getting the material out there. And furthermore, if you want to support the podcast of mine or these types of lessons like the Woodshed lessons, then head over to patreon.com/Lambertronics. Options are as low as a few bucks a month, and it really does encourage me to continue making content like this. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in episode number 3.